Hello, everybody. So glad to be on with you as we are together joining, as we're in this session exploring pastoral wellness. I know that there's been so much going on between the protests and the pandemic, and this world just looks like it's falling apart. But it falls on us as pastors to lead people, to support people through this time. And the Pastoral Evangelism and Leadership Council wanted to take this time to check up on those who are caring for others to make sure that you're doing well. I don't think that we as pastors hear that question often enough. Are we okay? Are we doing well? So we wanted to take this time to just check in and see if you're doing well. In fact, no matter where you're tuning in from, we encourage you to let us know where you're coming in from. We see that some people are tuning in from New York. Some people might be coming in from Canada, from Australia. Wherever you're coming in from, go ahead and shout out your city. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And we're so happy to have you here with us. So we're just going to open up with a word of prayer. Father, we just pray that you would bless us and lead us during this time. God, it falls on us to carry the responsibility of supporting others as they go through this time. But God, we're grateful that this time and this space has been carved out for the caretakers, for us to make sure that we are well. So, Father, we pray that you would be with us, that you would enlighten us, that you would guide us and inspire us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Greetings, everybody. Glad to have everybody on, and thanks, Edsel, for opening with prayer. We're excited. We want to just welcome you to the first of a series of webinars that we're going to be conducting between now and December. The theme for PELC 2020, incidentally, this webinar, most of you know, is being sponsored by the Pastoral Evangelism and Leadership Council, of which each of us is a part. And I'll be introducing the panelists a little bit later, but PELC is sponsoring this webinar and the webinars to follow. We're going to be doing this twice a month. Why are we doing this twice a month? Our theme in 2020 is Selah. We need strength for the struggle. That's the tagline. Selah. The tagline is strength for the struggle. And if you're a leader, if you're a pastor in the Christian church, you know how critically important it is for us to prioritize self-care. And so we want to do that. Our emphasis is going to be pastoral and leadership wellness. And we want you to be a part through these webinars that we present from month to month. There have been several questions about the status of PELC 2020. December 6th through 9. Those are the dates, December 6th through 9. And at this point, we are planning to have a traditional physical conference as we do every year. As a matter of fact, at this point, PELC is the largest continual gathering of pastors for continuing education in the denomination. And we're thankful for the foundation that has been laid and for the tremendous job that these individuals and others that you'll see today and others in the weeks to come are continuing to do. Having said that, we plan to be here in Huntsville, Alabama, although we are already making plans for a virtual conference just in case we need to exercise that option. Again, our keynote speaker this year, many of you know, is going to be Dr. Howard John Wesley, senior pastor of the Alfred Street Baptist Church there in Alexandria. Had an abbreviated, it seems, sabbatical that really set the pastoral world on fire. He's going to give us some information about his experiences on his sabbatical, in addition to the time that he will spend preaching. And so, again, we are conscious of the toll that COVID-19, virtual funerals, the traditional responsibilities of pastors and church leaders, the toll that all of this perfect storm can create. And so we want to be very intentional over the next several months, twice a month, presenting to you webinars that we believe will help you emotionally and spiritually. And so again, I want to welcome you to the first in a series of webinars on pastoral and leadership wellness. Glad to have you.
Dr. Joseph, you're muted. There we go.
Pastors, I'm glad that you are here with us today, and you have chosen to be in the right place at the right time. For these webinars have been planned especially with us in mind. We have so much going on that challenge our emotions. As if COVID-19 was not enough, we have to now deal with the atrocity that is being meted out to people of color, and the emotions that go with that and at the hands of those who our tax dollar pay to protect us. I want to say, pastors, our emotions are no different from the members we serve. And yet we have to ensure their well-being and care for them. But it begs the question, who is caring for our well-being, our emotions? How do we get to vent? How do we get to really come together in a forum where we can find information and resources to help us with our emotions? Well, this is it. This is it. Today, we are launching a series of webinars that will provide practical tools to pastors to help us navigate our own emotions as we help our members deal with their own emotions. In fact, today we are launching off with a very important topic. Am I okay? It begins with me. Am I okay? And then as we go along, we'll be looking at other topics such as reintegration. How do we get back into churches and the challenges that will come with that, and the congregational issues we have to face? And then what about the pastoral leadership as we navigate reintegration? What about leading while being angry? I don't know about you, but very often I'm angry as I look at the news every day. I know pastors, we got to lead our flock, and we wearing that mask and we know that we are angry. How do we minister while we are angry? What about our finances in this economic uncertainty? We'll be covering all of those best practices for ministry, for evangelism, for family. We will be providing you with first aid for dealing with your own emotions and so forth. And that's mental health first aid and dealing with grief and loss. All these are topics we will be covering in these webinars that we are launching today. So, hey, you're in for a good treat. You are in for good information to help you as a helper of those who are placed in your charge. Again, welcome, and back to you, Jesse.
Hey, thank you so much, Ainsworth. And I want to go ahead and
Seems like we've lost Dr. Wilson for a little bit, but he was going to be taking the time to just introduce our panel for today. This is our initial setup. We're just talking about, are you okay? And we have some great resources in store for you today as we just take some time to assess and see, are you as the pastor functioning well? Are you doing well? I am Pastor Edsel Cadet. I pastor the Cambridge Seventh-day Adventist Church in Everett, Massachusetts. But we are also joined by Pastor Kimberly Mann. She is the youth director. Go ahead and shout out your conference, Kim. Let us know where you represent and where you're serving.
Hey, everybody. I'm Pastor Kimberly Mann. I serve as the Associate Youth Director for South Central Conference, where I work with our young people. And then I also am a commissioned chaplain and a commissioned minister.
Excellent, excellent. And we came with some heavy reinforcements today. We came with Dr. Joseph. Dr. Joseph is the ministerial director for the Northeastern Conference. Dr. Joseph, just go ahead and share a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you know, I'm serving Northeastern Ministerial for the past 8 years, and I'm a pastor for 32 years this month, June, and also trained in the area of marriage and family. And it's a delight to be working with pastors, young and old, and I'm happy to be a pastor myself for 32 years. God has blessed me.
Amen, amen. And we are also joined by Dr. DeAndrea. Dr. DeAndrea, she is what we consider our big gun, who has been helping us put together our entire conference from beginning to end. We're so glad to have you on with us. Can you just share a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. Dr. DeAndrea Jackson. I am a Navy veteran, a clinical psychologist, a certified anxiety treatment professional, and I am also married to the CFO for the Allegheny West Conference, Jermaine Jackson.
Amen. So glad to have you with us. And of course, we have to shout out our fearless leader, Dr. Jesse Wilson. Dr. Wilson came and he already came prepared to lead us in this theme of wellness and just checking up on ourselves. So many times we're checking on everybody else. We're doing the hospital visits. We're doing the funerals. We're there for everybody else. And sometimes it is at the expense of our health or even our mental health. So I believe Dr. Wilson is back on with us. I don't know if he has anything else he wants to add.
Man, we believe in wellness, but I'm not sure my computer is well, man. Pray for my computer. But I'm back. I don't know what happened, but I'm back, Kim. Don't hold me accountable for this. But listen, again, I want to just say, and I'm sure, Edsel, if you've gone through the introductions, yeah. And have you done it? Great. And I just want to say personally how much we appreciate as a Pell committee, all of the facilitators, and this first program is so important. So we thank you so much for being here. Bless you all.
Now, we want to make sure that you know that you can go ahead and ask your questions, submit it to your Facebook chat. We're going to be able to see it, and you're going to be able to participate with us as we go through this discussion together.
All right, everyone. I don't know if you all can hear me out there, but we are, so we've been talking about, or going to talk about, am I okay? And Dr. J, he framed it so well that we as ministers, as leaders, we make sure everybody else is okay. Pastor Cadet said it, we do all the work a lot of times, but we're not making sure that we're okay. And so as we're launching, we really want to give some time for us as leaders to check in. Am I okay? I don't know about you all, but in the last 2 weeks, between the idea of America reopening, coronavirus cases still rising, protests happening in the streets, Black Lives Matter, going back and forth in the church. Should we protest? Should we not protest? The anxiety of how to reintegrate, all of those things for me have been just stressful. And I know that everybody's situation looks different, but our America, our reality, our church experience looks far different today than it did just a couple months ago. And so, you know, I think we want to just talk about, and I'm going to talk to my panelists right now. How are you all feeling about kind of going reintegration? I guess I ask, how was this process for you? How has the last 3 months been for you all?
It's been challenging. So many ups, so many downs between, all of 2020 has just been being hit after hit after hit, between the fires in Australia to the passing of Kobe Bryant to then COVID. And then with the COVID, you can't just go out. You can't just do what you would normally do to decompress. The phone calls, the near misses, the people who have passed, it's just been so much. So it's been a lot to manage over the past few months.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the same, Kim. Balancing homeschooling with career and telehealth and continuing to see clients. One of the difficult things has been managing the same exact thing that my clients are managing in real time. And so dealing with anxiety within yourself and then helping other people work through their anxieties can be a little bit of a challenge. And I can honestly say there's been a little bit of like teetering that compassion fatigue and that burnout level, and needing to prioritize your own self-care.
Yeah. What about you, Dr. J?
If I were to take one word to describe how I feel, it's going to be overwhelmed. Because so much came upon me, upon us in such a short space of time. And then, as I look to the future, the other word would be trepidation, because there's the uncertainty of what the future holds. And for me, the big issue, Akim, is not being able to be with people who you love and to touch them and to just fellowship. To me, that's the biggest challenge of this whole experience we have been going through. And I can't wait of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I resonate with all of you all. For me, this has been a really interesting experience because I'm moving into a new leadership position. And before I could really even get a chance to get the flow of that, everything kind of just shut down. We're expecting a little baby in the end of August. So being pregnant during a pandemic has been challenging, to say the least, from trying to make sure that I'm doing self-care, to homeschooling toddlers, to keeping them busy, to taking care of myself. All of those things have been just really challenging. And just when I was kind of like, okay, this is the new normal, this whole thing with George Floyd erupted, and all I felt was just anger. And so on one side, there's anger at what's happening in our world. On the other side, there's this fear that I could get sick. And if I get sick, something could happen to the baby, something could happen to me. So now the people that I love, I'm looking at them like, you might have, don't kill me, please. Right. You know what I mean? And so it's challenging to maintain those relationships. It's challenging not to be afraid. And it's challenging really to not just be mad all the time at America. So that's kind of where, I've been navigating. Dr. Jackson, are these feelings normal? Like, because we always talk about being Christ-like and that kind of thing. So are these feelings of fear, anxiety, being overwhelmed, is that normal?
That's absolutely normal. And experiencing the basic human emotional experience does not reflect an absence of faith at all. And we can also experience hurt and be hopeful. We can experience anger with the issues that are happening in society and still have faith that God is going to work things out. So it is absolutely normal. And I want to just continue to reiterate that your feelings are real and it's okay to acknowledge those feelings. That's part of emotional wellness. And I think everything that we've touched on so far really kind of touches on the main domains of personal wellness in general. Mm-hmm. Can I have a little time to talk about what those domains are?
Yeah, go ahead. This is our expert, guys, so listen up.
So one of the main takeaways I want you guys to have is that emotional wellness is not the only piece that we need to be focusing on when we're asking, are you okay? We also want to encourage you to consider, how are you doing with your environmental wellness, right? And let's define those two things. Emotional wellness is understanding how you're feeling and expressing your emotions in a constructive way. It's having the ability to get through stressors and cope with life's challenges. And that's a huge piece of maintaining personal wellness, but there's some other elements as well. Environmental wellness looks at how you're engaging with your natural environment. So like the outdoors, outside, and also your social environment. And so as we're talking about some of the challenges and the strong feelings that we're having about things that are happening in our society and race-based stress, that's really factoring into our environmental wellness. And we need to do a check-in with ourselves in those areas. There's also occupational wellness, which of course is, your fulfillment in your job or your academic pursuits. There's intellectual wellness. And intellectual wellness looks at your ability to engage in creative and stimulating activities. And we want to be sure we address that. And then the last three are physical wellness. We're all familiar with that. Are you getting your checkups? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? those kind of things that really reflect any harmful practices that you may be engaging in for your body, your health, or your safety. And there's social wellness, which is something that we've all kind of alluded to as well, either being socially isolated because of the quarantines associated with COVID-19. And for those of us who were not quarantined alone, then we have this social insulation where we're just kind of circumscribed to the people that we love, but we all know the people we love can get on our nerves sometimes too, and that can be a stressor. So we're looking at social wellness, and finally spiritual wellness, which is not the least of which that we need to consider. Our faith, the things that we value, the beliefs that we have that give purpose and meaning to our lives are also things that we need to consider in terms of wellness.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
And so I was going to ask you, so as a pastor, as a young pastor, as a newly married pastor, how do you see yourself mitigating or navigate? Like, do we ask ourselves the questions, am I okay? Or have we been trained to say, even if I'm not okay, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing? How have you been able to find that balance in this time?
Great question. I'm so grateful that we have this space, because although I ask myself regularly, am I okay? And I think our colleagues ask themselves the same question as well. We're faced with the dilemma of, if I'm not okay, who can I tell? I can't tell my members, because my members will view it either as complaining, or they're going to perceive it as, well, I can't go to the pastor with my issues because he or she has their own issues. And then that creates more issues, right? Because then later on you find out that they were going through things. And the heart of any pastor is, I'd rather still be there for you. Even if I'm going through my own stuff, I still want to be there for you. So you can't turn to your members. You can't always turn to your spouse, just because you don't want to turn your spouse into your pastor. You want to be able to just be husband or just be wife when you're at home. And then, do you tell your ministerial director? Do you tell your administration? And how do you share it with them without them perceiving it as, well, this pastor can't cut it. This pastor can't handle these things. I'm here, I'm on with my ministerial director, and I'm grateful that I can share with him and tell him, hey, this is what's going on. But I think all of us carry the concern that we don't want our vulnerability to be perceived as weakness. We don't want our vulnerability to be perceived as us being incapable of being able to manage the assignment that has been given to us. So I think we ask the question. I know I definitely do. But then I run into the dilemma of, well, who do I tell? Who can I turn to? Who can I speak to where there's still confidentiality? I can receive support, and my cachet as a minister, my cachet as a pastor is not diminished because I'm going through this time, this season, or through this issue.
I'd love to provide you with some resources. Oftentimes, as we're going through training as clinicians, we're encouraged to get our own support system as well. And that might look like a therapist, which, some people, let's be honest, in the African-American community, there's a lot of stigma, and in the Christian community or the religious community, there's stigma there too. But recently we've seen an increase in even coaches in the field. Life coaches can be there as a support system for you, external to your working organization structure. So I would encourage everyone to find a team outside of family, outside of the work setting, that can be there to support you through this. There are a number of directories for behavioral health counselors who can help just support you. Supportive therapy is definitely a thing. You don't have to come in because there's a major crisis or a major disruption in your life or a huge transition. It's okay to come in just to have support and have someone to talk to. So I can give you a list of resources that we can share with all the pastors for different directories that have, let's say, demographic specialties. So clinicians of color, clinicians for women, clinicians for men. I think that would be a wonderful resource to provide.
Excellent.
Hey, so go ahead. I was going to ask real quick, Dr. Joseph, I was going to ask you, as the ministerial director, when a pastor or a leader says, I'm not okay, what is supposed to be the protocol? Like, how are our pastors and our leaders supposed to get help without feeling like it's a weakness, or feeling like, oh, if I tell them I'm not okay, or if I tell them that, listen, this coronavirus has exposed all the flaws in my marriage and we're done? Like, how do how are our conference leaders set up to be able to provide care? Because I think the fear is they're not going to understand me, so I'm going to go elsewhere, or I'm just going to deal with it myself. And when you deal with it yourself, you're really not growing. I think I just stole Edsel's question. Sorry. You can deflect when you answer. You can just deflect to Edsel because I literally stole his question.
But that's a good question, Kim, and good scenario, Edsel, as well. I could tell you what we do in Northeastern. We provide support to our pastors. We don't judge them. We spend tons of dollars. We have a private place where we send pastors where they can get help. No one knows. It does not affect their job. It does not affect their assignment. We don't look down on them. And so all our pastors and their families in Northeastern Conference, we provide them a hotline where they can call and get the help they need at the expense of the conference. And it does not impact their job. It does not affect how we look at them.
Go ahead, Edsel.
Well, that's good to know. That's reassuring. At least in Northeastern, we have a safe haven. We're okay. We're taken care of.
Hey, Jesse, I was gonna ask you. You're somewhere back there.
Yeah.
What do you? Somebody just asked, who pastors the pastor? I know that in many circles, many people view you as kind of the pastor's pastor. You say a lot of things that a lot of pastors are thinking but won't say. I feel like God is giving you a voice for a lot of people that maybe don't feel like they have a voice. So who pastors the pastor? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that we have, and I appreciate that. I think we have a great group of ministerial directors. Of course, Ainsworth is one of those. And so the individuals whose direct responsibility it is to pastor the pastors would be the ministerial directors. But anybody who's pastored or served in any position of leadership knows about these informal networks that we forge. And it kind of gets around our age groups, our affinities. Some people we just feel much more comfortable sharing with. I think that the fact that I have a position that's kind of in between a number of positions, it's almost a middle ground between the presidents and the pastors, the students, and certain other layers, gives me an opportunity to hear some things that some others might not hear. And there are others who serve in pretty much the same role as I do. Keith Burton is an example. But my point is, I think that Pastor Jackson, Dr. Jackson, she has a number of titles, but pastor's not one of them. I think when she earlier mentioned the need for identifying help, I think I'm interested in Dr. DeAndrea Jackson's perspective on this. It seems to me that in the church in general, and among pastors in particular, there is a reluctance to seek out counseling. And so what would you suggest, Doc, in that regard? There's a need. I think one of the things that pastors can do, and one of the things I certainly tried to do when I was in my churches, was to be transparent about my experiences, as limited as, I'm as reluctant as I'm a stereotypical guy in that regard, very reluctant without prodding to go for help. But I took the initiative a couple of times, spoke to them about it. And I think to signal that it's okay to the congregation is a step forward for the congregation. But what would you say to pastors about this need for seeking out help?
I would say you're human first.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, in order to shepherd other people, you have to be in a place where you feel like you've had the opportunity to be nurtured as well. And so it's a matter of feeling comfortable with your own humanity first, and knowing that in order to be there for other people, you have to fill your cup. So there are a lot of analogies that we use in therapy, and you guys probably know this one. The explanation that they give on the airplane. when the masks drop down, if you're traveling with a child or someone who needs assistance, what's the recommendation they always give?
Sure.
They say help yourself first, right?
Exactly.
Put your mask on first so that you can be there and be of sufficient assistance to provide that for someone else. And so as you're preparing to be a great behavioral model for your congregation and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's normalize the fact that we all have a span of human emotions and those things are okay. This is how I've also challenged those things. This is how I've worked through my pride or the stigma in my community or the stigma in my church or the stigma that I have as a man or the stigma that I have as a woman in my expected gender roles. It's okay for me to say, listen, I need some help.
We're going to talk about this in an upcoming webinar. I've seen you get, incidentally, the group that you're looking at, in addition to Richard Martin, has already scheduled out a series of webinars to come, and we're going to be speaking about that a little later. But I know that one of the upcoming webinars is going to deal with the spiritual component that makes Christians reluctant at time or hesitant to seek out, to acknowledge that I got a problem, is to send a signal that my problem is actually deeper than it is. It's not just physical, it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. And I think that's at the foundation of a lot of our issues as Christians. But I'm glad you guys scheduled that for a future webinar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like what you said, Jesse, but I also want to chime in and kind of say that in addition to many of our issues being spiritual, I think sometimes there are just life issues and baggage issues and childhood issues that were never dealt with. And then we became leaders and pastors, and all of these things happen without dealing with those things. And I think sometimes people's hesitancy is, if I come out and say I'm not okay, people will think that something is wrong with me spiritually. And they'll think that I'm not spiritual enough to lead because my marriage is not working, or I'm not praying enough because, you know, I'm needing to go to counseling, or I'm not holy enough to lead a church because I'm struggling with alcoholism, you know. And so I think there's that delicate space there between, yes, sometimes the issue really is spiritual, but sometimes the issue is there's really just some other core stuff that needs to get dealt with. And I've been praying, I've been reading my Bible, I've been in my prayer closet for 12 hours a day, but I still am struggling. And so, you know, how do you, and I guess I can throw this to maybe Dr. Jackson, how do you take that step, or how do you recognize when something is deeper than just, I need to pray more?
I think that goes back to what we're emphasizing here now, this full biological, psychological, social, and spiritual kind of insight. It's taking that time to ask yourself that question, am I okay? And what's really at the root of what's going on? I know my life story. I'm the expert on my life. And I recognize that, you know, I have some grief that I haven't dealt with, or I have some biological vulnerability towards substances and the way that those can numb me out. And it might not look like alcohol, but it might look like taking too many prescribed medications, or it might look like, you know, self-medicating with food, or any number of things, sex. I mean, it can be any number of things that we are trying to cope with. And it's a matter of looking yourself in the mirror and saying, hey, listen, something's not right. And I need to spend some time asking myself what those things are. From a clinical perspective, we'd be looking at, you know, what's your mood been like? Have you been feeling down? How long have you been feeling down? And do those sad or down feelings, or even for men, particularly African-American men, a lot of irritability. Depression is experienced or manifested as anger for men oftentimes. And so am I noticing that that is increasing or intensifying? And is it accompanied by other things like changes in my sleeping patterns, or my appetite, or my energy level, or even my ability to concentrate? Those are signs of clinical depression. If we're thinking about anxiety, especially in the context of COVID-19, and like Kim was explaining, that anxiety about who can I allow myself to be around and expose myself to, if that turns into this uncontrollable worry about the future, or about things that are outside of your control or unpredictable, that starts to look like clinical anxiety. And if you find that it's also contributing to irritability or sleeplessness or muscle tension or increased headaches, those are signs that your body is trying to give you that say, you know what, something is amiss, and I need to spend some time considering what that thing might be.
That's great. I think that for many ministers, for many pastors, we find a way to operate in through our brokenness. We find a way to just duct tape the areas that are broken, duct tape the areas that are hurting, and we just persevere from weekend to weekend, from service to service. We smile, we say hello. But I think that the season we're in right now, just speaking specifically of the pandemic, has created an extra layer of stress where some of the areas that may have been covered up are now starting to crack. They're being exposed. So I'm wondering if you can share anything with us in regards to how we can better manage this season of heightened stress, and what we can be doing better as ministers.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
I'm just wondering if there's something that we can be doing better during the season of heightened stress. Is there an opportunity here for us to take better stock of our mental health, our emotional health, our intellectual health?
Absolutely.
And what do we do? What are our next steps?
So next steps after you kind of do that self-reflection, you can go online. Mental Health America actually has some of these forms that you may have seen when you go to your PCM for your yearly exam. And they help you assess some of these feelings that you may be experiencing, whether it's anxiety or depression, or if you have a history of trauma, or even maybe some expansive moods related to a chemical imbalance like bipolar disorder. There are some screening measures on there that can help guide you around, is this something that I need to be investigating a little bit more and maybe opening myself up to treatment like I would if I had a broken arm or a stomach ache or an ulcer or something like that? Is this something that needs to be treated? So I would say definitely, if you find in your personal self-reflection, I'm acting a little bit differently than I used to in the past, go to Mental Health America, I believe it's .org, and there are some free assessments that you can do on there. And if that's the case, you find something is a little amiss, then schedule an appointment with your PCM and maybe even a therapist if you're open to that. But in terms of coping, I think that's really what you're asking for, is how do I deal with it if I notice it? Mm-hmm. And if I'm unwilling at this point to go in, because therapy is not for everybody, I will say that it's hard work and folks don't often want to engage in some of that hard work. If you find that it's not for you, that's okay too. Let's figure out how to manage your stress. Let's identify where things are not in balance in your life. And then let's create some strategies or some plans to help get you closer to where you want to be. That's the work I do in therapy with my clients. Not everything is a clinical issue. Sometimes we just need some problem solving, or to be solution focused, or to organize and prioritize the things in our life, create boundaries, or find ways to be more effective in our communication. That's what's really at the root of what we're doing in a therapy situation. Does that answer your question effectively?
It does. I'm just wondering also, what's Dr. Joseph's perspective? He's also a therapist and he's a ministerial director and pastor. Dr. Joseph, do you have anything to add to
that? You know, I wanted to add to that because, Pastor, I think there's a danger, and I would love to even have Dr. Jackson respond to this, because there's a danger of pretending that one is well and ministering while you are sick, but pretending you are well. Dr. Jackson, I would want you to expand on that some more. What's the danger of one masking and acting like you are well and you are not well? What are some of the potential dangers that can come from that?
Well, aside from the psychological overwhelm, our stress, chronic stress, can impact your physical health. It can impact your cardiovascular functioning. It can lead to panic-like symptoms, which might look like chest pain, might look like heart palpitations or an accelerated heart rate. People can begin to have chronic migraines or exacerbated physiological pain. So maybe back pain gets worse, or you're holding your stress in the back of your shoulders. Those kind of things are what occur in the context of chronic stress. Not to mention, chronic stress is one of the major contributors to burnout, which the World Health Organization has actually identified as a clinical disorder. And so that's something that we really need to be mindful of. If you're not dealing with what's going on and with your stress, that can lead you to become ineffective. But if you recognize things are getting overwhelming, I'm feeling a little bit frayed at both ends of my rope, what can I do? Let's get in there and jump in and create some solutions before it begins to impact your functioning, your work, your family relationships, your friendships. Those are the dangers of leaving things unaddressed.
And I was going to say that I think that what you said is so important, that, like, you know, I see it as the things we've been talking about with COVID, right? So if you feel short of breath, or they said the first signs are if you lose your sense of taste or you lose your sense of smell, like with coronavirus, if you begin to lose your sense of smell or your sense of taste, like, you're not going to be like, you know, I can't taste this delicious dinner roast that I just cooked, and I can't smell anything, but I'm just going to hang out at home with my kids and with my family and hope it goes away. And I think that we do that with our mental health and our emotional health and our spiritual well-being, hoping that when the symptoms pop up, when we start to feel stressed and we start to see those stressors reveal themselves, they'll just go away. But one of the things we've been learning, I mean, even with this virus, is that the sooner you can get treatment, the sooner that you can get an intervention, the more likely you are to survive. And I think the same is true for our spiritual and mental and emotional health, is that when you start seeing symptoms, the sooner you can go, you know, talk to somebody and deal with someone, the sooner you can start to get better. And there's nothing worse than finding out that you have cancer or that you have a life-threatening disease at the end, when you could have done something preventative beforehand. So I think that it's super important to, when you start to see those symptoms, when people start to be like, yo, you snapped at me for no reason, or you're not sleeping through the night, lots of things that Dr. Jackson was saying, to take those steps. I know for me, like I said, you know, I'm expecting a baby. Even my health visits, I have not been able to go into the, like, meet the doctor because of coronavirus. So I've been having all of my appointments through telehealth, and I'm like, you can't see, you can see if I'm okay, but you can't really check me. Like, how do you know if I'm okay? And so, like, the anxiety of dealing with that, like, my back was hurting. I wasn't able to sleep at night. And it was stressing me out. And so I realized, I was like, I need to go see a chiropractor, a massage therapist, somebody. And so our insurance, I don't know what kind, I don't know if it's conference wide or worldwide, but our insurance pays for us to go see a chiropractor. So for me, I go to see my chiropractor every 2 weeks. And that, for me, is self-care. For me, that is a part of making sure that I am okay. Because if my back is hurting, if I can't sleep, if I'm stressed out about a doctor not being able to see me, that will further impact not just me, but the life that I'm growing. So I need to take care of me for me. And although, you know, you all may not be expecting children, you're growing lives within your churches, you're growing lives in your home, and you have to make sure that you're okay, so that way you're able to be that presence and minister from a full cup.
And that expecting children thing almost threw me, Kim. Thank you, Jesus. It is. I need to mute my mic here, but Dr. Jackson, let me ask you this. One of the things that a number of pastors seem to, including myself, have trouble dealing with, or it's been a struggle, are these funerals don't stop. The funerals have not stopped. I had a family member to pass, and we had to do a Facebook funeral. And I know that has been a particular challenge for pastors and non-pastors. Any advice for those leaders who are trying to help folk navigate grief virtually, or others impacted by it?
Give them the opportunity to just emote and express. Mm-hmm. Give them the opportunity to grieve and just be there to listen. Mm-hmm. And once you listen some more, and recognize that this grief experience, of course, is layered with all these other societal challenges that we have. So even when we think that, things would have moved on for them, or they would begin their healing process from that loss, we may find that things just kind of creep up every now and again. Someone else's family member dies and it gets a lot of attention, or maybe it happens after some restrictions are lifted and they can have closure with an opportunity to have a funeral and be there and view and experience that part of their grieving process. And so respecting the fact that their grief is not going to be linear. Grief is never linear to begin with, but being there to provide that support consistently is important. But how do you deal with it when you are constantly bombarded by death, I think is another element of something that we need to look at. My father served in the Navy as well. And for a period of his career, he was a chaplain at Arlington National Cemetery. And that was at the height of the war. And so he was doing multiple funerals a day. And I could see it even as a student, just kind of see it eroding my father's empathy, eroding his sense of emotional wellness overall. And that was a difficult but really meaningful opportunity for him. And what I also saw him do was take that experience and shift it from something that was a constant stressor to something that was meaningful and purposeful. Nobody wants to be the person who has to do funeral after funeral. It's exhausting. It's emotionally draining because you're trying to give so much of yourself to other people. But what I saw my father do was shift that potentially traumatic experience for him into something that was purposeful and meaningful. I am here to hold this space for this family and these individuals in the midst of a very challenging time in society and in their personal lives. And all I have to do is be present in that moment. And when that moment is finished, I compartmentalize and I move on to the next moment. And then when my shift is over, I come home and I self-care. I pour into myself. I accumulate positive events in my life in the short term and the long term. And I find other ways and other outlets to replenish myself so that he was resilient and could go back and give to the population that he was serving at that period of time.
I love it.
Can I give you some more skills for how people can deal with the bombardment of multiple emotional experiences and kind of seek to create a little bit less vulnerability toward the negative emotions? There is a psychologist, her name is Marsha Linehan. I always have to give credit where credit is due because this is not original to me. But in her theory and in her approach to practice, she's got a lot of acronyms. And one of them is ABC, please. So I hope you have a pen and a pad. Open up your phone, put it in your notes section. But this is going to be helpful for you to regulate your emotions during all of this stuff that we're experiencing right now. The A stands for accumulate the positives. In the short term and in the long term, how are you finding ways to accumulate positive emotional experiences in your life? The more of them you have, the more of them you have to reflect on and to experience. And it kind of sets the stage rather than allowing yourself to go up and down and up and down and up and down. It gives you more of a barometer and a middle line. The B stands for building mastery. This is where you're engaging in something outside of those things that are really stressful for you and overwhelming. You're doing something that helps you feel competent and effective so that it combats feelings of helplessness or hopelessness in other areas of your life, right? So we're focusing our energy into places where we can control, and we're finding ways to do things that help us feel better. The C stands for coping ahead. So coping ahead of situations that you know are going to be challenging. You anticipate, what do I think is going to happen here? And how do I think I can address that? What might I feel? What might I have the urge to say or do? And will that be beneficial? Or should I choose another route in order to prepare myself to handle that effectively? Now the please, this is where we're going to be jotting stuff down really quickly. The please stands for several things. The P stands for treating physical illnesses, right? We're talking about a whole person, not just our emotional experience. So you need to be getting good sleep. You need to be getting balanced meals. You definitely need to make sure you're taking any medications that are required to treat your physical illnesses. The E stands for balanced eating. The A stands for avoiding mood-altering substances. Now, that, of course, includes drugs and alcohol. It also includes food. If the pint of ice cream is not going to make you feel good later, don't eat it. It's avoidable, right? The S stands for balanced sleep, and the E stands for get exercise. So I really like to use this approach and give this to my clients in my sessions, because it's one of those things that looks at the whole person and says, what are some ways that you can help regulate your emotional experience doing things that you go about doing in your normal life anyway, like the please skills. And then the ABC gives you some alternatives for what you can do to help prevent your vulnerability to emotions. Negative emotions, that is.
Awesome. Those are some great stuff. Jotting them down as you're saying them so that, we have them. I hope that you all who are watching are writing this stuff down, are putting it in a note, putting it on a sticky note in your mirror, in your Bible, right, where you can see them, where you can constantly continue to highlight and see these things that are happening. And I wanted to kind of throw this out because we're talking about funerals, we're talking about having to navigate death. I know for the African-American community, we have been overwhelmed by death. I believe it was Memorial Day weekend, like George Floyd died. I think right before that, Breonna Taylor died. Right before that, although he didn't die, we saw the issue with the Amy, trying to call the police on the African-American man in the park. I mean, like literally, it was in 1 week, and there were like 4 or 5 incidences of either death threats or actual threat or harm towards African-American people. So how do we navigate race-based stress? Because I know for me, when I tell you I had to log off social media because I was mad, like I was ready to go straight Peter on some saints, because it's just been a lot. It's been just issues, navigating people who you thought were your friends, but you find out they're racist, navigating church people who tell you to sit down or don't participate or don't do anything, but you feel as a leader, as a pastor, a spiritual calling. How do you just navigate that race-based stress without, being the person that drives their car into a crowd full of police officers?
Well, we certainly don't want to declare any harm to self or other people.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that I would do that. I'm just saying that people out there are angry. People out there are angry, for real angry. So how do we mitigate that stress? How do we as leaders mitigate that stress within ourselves when we're ready to protest or we're angry?
Acknowledge the anger. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what do I actually need in this moment? Do I need to run my car through a bunch of people? No. What I need is to feel heard, to feel understood, to feel seen and supported by the people around me, to allow myself to recognize that this is overwhelming. Why are we still here? Right? So you acknowledge the feeling, you recognize that it's valid, and you give yourself space to feel for it, or to feel it rather. And then you say, what do I need in this moment? All of our emotions have functions. They have reasons that they occur. Oftentimes it is to communicate or help us communicate something to someone else. It is to validate that something is not okay, something is wrong within our environment or within our society. And other times it's there to help us organize and prepare to take action or motivate us to take action. So if you're finding yourself in a space where you're angry and you're feeling fueled and motivated to do something or to act in a way that helps to foster change in society, right? Because this is not just, it is a Black issue. It is a Black issue. But there are also situations of race-based trauma that occur for other Indigenous people of color. And so we don't want to ignore that either. And we're called in this moment to further the movement in ways that fit with our values and our belief systems. And that's individual to a person. Now, what your hierarchical or organizational expectations of you might be is something you have to find ways to be effective with, right? Like we don't want to just kind of do things that are going to cut our nose off to spite our face. That's not effective. But find ways in your life that fit with your values to be engaged. If you're feeling motivated to organize and to act. If you know what, you're not in a space where you're ready to act, that's okay too. You can just say, maybe this is my awakening moment. Maybe in my development and my connection with my identity as a person of color, I'm learning, wow, this really is a huge problem. Maybe I was one of those individuals that thought we were in a post-racial society, and this is an awakening for me. And my emotions or my anger is serving to validate for me that something is not okay. This is not okay. I can speak out. I can be an individual who talks about race-related issues, microaggressions or macroaggressions in my spaces of influence. Or I can be an individual who chooses to be a bystander interventionist. I'm not going to continue to let these things happen. If I am a Caucasian or white individual, when I see it happening, I'm going to speak up and I'm going to say something about it. If I'm Latino and I get other privileges in situations where I'm exposed to African American people, when I see it happening, I'm going to say something about it. I'm not going to allow these micro and macroaggressions to continue over time. That is one of the ways that you can begin to make some changes if you're not feeling like the front line is my place, right? Or my anger, I don't want it to take control of me, so I'm not going to put myself into precarious situations or situations that could escalate very quickly. Got to know yourself. Other ways that you can deal with that when you're angry is to utilize some strategies to calm your body. So when we're angry, I don't know about you guys, but can I be transparent?
Go ahead.
When I'm angry, my temperature rises. There's something within me that begins to boil. I notice muscles beginning to get tense in my body. I recognize that my speech changes. As a woman, my speech might get shaky or high-pitched. I might have an urge because I'm so angry that I want to yell or turn over a table.
Or drive a car into a crowd.
Or drive a car into a crowd. Some people might have words that they don't typically use that they want to use. These are all cues for us, right? Listen, I'm just being honest. This happens with Christians, right? And so those are all cues for us with regard to where am I? Am I at a level where I'm going to be ineffective with my anger? And what are some strategies that I can do to bring myself down? The first thing is noticing what's happening in your body and calming your body down. I promise you this simple strategy is one of the most effective strategies that you're going to find. A competent therapist is going to tell you about diaphragmatic breathing. And that's important because it actually changes what's happening within your brain when you're experiencing intense emotions, be it fear or anger or sadness. Diaphragmatic breathing is a way to regulate yourself. And what you're doing is literally accessing that little organ in your abdomen. You're giving it space so that you can take these calm, relaxing breaths. And what that does is it shuts off that part of your brain that wants to hijack everything and wants you to act on emotion and not process the things that are going on. A diaphragmatic breath is going to be paced. It's going to be very controlled. You're going to inhale for 4. You're going to hold it for 2. And you're going to exhale that breath totally and completely for 6 seconds. And when you do that 16 times, research has shown that that will calm your intense emotions down. It'll give you space between the situation, the emotion, and whatever action you choose to take after that, so that you can be intentional rather than reactive.
Good
That's
stuff.
excellent. That's excellent. So what I'm hearing you say is that when we're feeling negative emotions, we shouldn't try to suppress the emotions. We should try to manage our bodies, manage ourselves, calm down, and then see these emotions as signals that something else is wrong and deal with the thing that's wrong, not just try to suppress or push aside what we're feeling.
Exactly.
Excellent.
The emotion is totally normal. Sit with it so that you can understand it, know what you need, and move forward. I'd like to just recap some of those skills that I've rattled off so that everybody can be mindful of what they are as ways to manage their physical, emotional, occupational, all the areas of wellness that we've talked about. The first skill that I said was ABC, please. A stands for accumulating positive events in the short term and the long term. B stands for building mastery. That's doing something that can help you feel competent and effective. C is coping ahead, looking at the situation that you anticipate is going to happen and figuring out how you can effectively move through that. Please is what stood for several things. The P is treating physical illnesses. The E is balanced eating. The A is avoiding mood-altering substances, to include alcohol, drugs, and food if it's not going to make you feel better. The S stands for balanced sleep, and the E stands for getting more exercise. I also talked about diaphragmatic breathing, that paced, controlled breathing where you're opening up your abdomen. That pace is 4 seconds in through your nose, hold it for 2 seconds, out for 6 seconds through your mouth. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. Okay? Another thing that I would recommend in the context of dealing with really strong emotions, particularly anger, is the stop skill. The stop skill is stopping, taking a moment to assess the situation. You're going to take a step back. You're going to observe what's happening. And then you're going to proceed mindfully. STOP, stop. Take a step back, observe, proceed mindfully. Okay?
I think this is all great, and I think that these are good answers to the question that was posted before about what do you do as a pastor when you, in fact, let me post it here. It says, how can a pastor deal with a funeral of his members when he, the pastor himself or herself, when they're grieving? And I think all the skills you just listed are good tools and techniques, because the truth is that we still have to minister, we still have to perform in the midst of our own grief. And everything you listed. I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to add, but these are great tools to employ as you prepare to minister to others while you're grieving yourself.
I think all of those are applicable, certainly, but then also recognizing that compartmentalization is a really good skill. Being able to be present in the moment and attend to the needs of the person in front of you, so that you can then hold on to your feelings for a moment. And when you have time, allowing yourself to emote, to grieve, to cry, to be angry, to question. It's nonlinear, but you have to give yourself time to do that. So making intentional space for you to process your own emotions is important.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
This has been so awesome. These tips are great. I think my personal takeaway has been stop. And I think that when we want that goes for everybody, leaders and members, everybody, just stop, take a step back, observe, always observe, right?
That's right.
Observe, and then
proceed mindfully.
I think if everybody just stops for a second, I think that would definitely help. One of the things that I know has been beneficial, we've been talking about all of these things, answering the question, am I okay? How do I do that? There is an assessment that we're going to post on the social media page on PELC, where you can literally go take the assessment and really see, am I okay? Because sometimes we be lying to ourselves. Am I okay? Yeah, I'm good. No, you're not. You're not okay. You're not. But since you're not going to believe yourself, let somebody else tell you. So take the assessment, check in with yourself before we go back into traditional church, before we go back to our jobs, before we go back to our new normal. Really take some time to check in with yourself, complete the survey online. Based on those results, you can reach out to your healthcare provider for either counseling or maybe there's some health challenges or physical challenges or maybe things you just want to work on. Use your circles of resources and friends and say, hey guys, I took this assessment. I don't think I'm okay. You know, can I talk to you? Use those resources. So please, we want you to take the assessment. We took the assessment. Did y'all take this? Pastor Wilson, did you take the assessment?
I knew that was coming. I'm taking it on the way. It's coming. It's coming.
No,
can I add a little bit about this assessment?
There you go.
Let me tell them a little bit about the assessment.
Okay,
this was developed by Princeton University, and it's such a great resource. It provides you with an emotion wheel, so a colorful imagery that tells you exactly those domains that I kind of rattled off at the beginning of the session. And then accompanied with that is an actual survey that goes through each one of those domains and gives you questions to help with that self-reflection. So you don't do what Kim was saying. Am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay. This gives you some specific questions to answer so that you can know truthfully, how well am I doing? And then at the end of it, it gives you a score. And based on that score, you'll be able to identify where are some things out of balance for me. But what I really love about this assessment is that at the end of it, it says, all right, I don't just have a score. I don't just know where I'm out of balance. I also have a way to strategize and create some goals or set some plans in motion for me to improve those areas in my life. And it sets what we establish in the clinical realm as a SMART goal, something that is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And so this resource is going to be great for you because it gives you something tangible that you can take away, helps you with your personal reflection, and gives you some information that you can use. You can also follow up with your PCM if you need to for some additional information.
And Deandra, what is PCM? Can you, because everyone might not be familiar with that.
Primary care manager, or some people call them PCPs, primary care provider or physician. It's whoever you go to for your annual checkup.
Awesome.
The thing about the Princeton assessment, unfortunately, guys, we have to get permission to use this, and they granted us permission to put it on the website, but we weren't able to change some of the terminology in there. So where you see information that is specific to Princeton University, that's okay, because it's a wonderful measure, and you may be able to kind of pull from some of their resources. But consider in that context, if I can't use a Princeton resource, what might be something in my state, in my community, in my environment, or in my sphere of influence that I can kind of use to replace this Princeton specific resource that's being discussed.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have had a great time together. I'm going to throw it to you, Dr. Wilson, if there's anything else that you want to say, and then we'll proceed to wrap up with Dr. J.
Yeah, I'm excited. This has been fantastic. Want to say a word of appreciation to Dr. Jackson, to Pastor Cadet, to Dr. Joseph, and always to Pastor Kim, just doing a tremendous job of moderating, keeping things moving. And this is the first time. This is a first for us. I want to remind you that we will be doing these webinars twice a month, and I'm sure Dr. Joseph will tell you about when and what subject we will cover in our next one. But just remind you again that PELT is sponsoring these twice monthly webinars, and we want you to tell everybody you can, because we've got some powerful information I think will be helpful to you. And we're looking forward again to December 6th through 9. Selah. Strength for the struggle is going to be our theme, and we're going to be looking at pastoral and leadership wellness. Thanks, guys.
Dr. J, over to you.
Thank you. Just a word to our pastors. You know, we take our new car back to the dealer to make sure it's okay. And what is not okay, we find a mechanic to make sure that it gets okay. I want to encourage us pastors to treat ourselves better than our cars. Get the help we need. Take care of our health so we can take care of those who are in our charge. And so I encourage you to practice the skills that were given by Dr. Jackson so that we can all be okay and serve God's people as he has called us to serve. Our next webinar will be on June the 23rd, same time, same place, and we will be addressing reintegration, dealing with congregational challenges that will go along with reintegration. Thank you very much, and we see you next time, same place and same time. God bless you.